Welcome to today's lecture on age. Let me start by asking you, have you ever been told to act your age? Take a moment to think about what that really means. Most likely, the person wasn't talking about your birth certificate or your chronological age, the straightforward count of years since you were born. That's the most common way we think about age, a simple objective number. And sure, as we get older, our bodies and minds change. That's a fact. But age isn't just biology or math. There's also psychological age, how old you feel emotionally or in terms of maturity. Some people feel younger than their actual age. Others might seem older than their years. So there's often a disconnect between how old we are and how old we feel or act. Even that doesn't fully explain what people mean when they say, act your age. That phrase points to something deeper, social age. This is the idea that age is socially constructed, connected to the roles, expectations, and norms that society assigns to people at different stages of life. Every culture has these age scripts, unwritten rules about how people should behave based on their age group. Kids are supposed to be playful and obedient, teenagers rebellious and dramatic, adults responsible, and seniors wise or retired. But who created these scripts and why do we keep following them? So the next time you hear act your age, it's worth asking, whose definition of age are we really talking about? In this lecture, we'll explore not just how we measure age, but how we experience it and how social expectations shape what it means to be a certain age just as much as biology does. Now, let's unpack something we usually take for granted, age. At first glance, age seems straightforward. You're born, you count the years, and that number defines your age. But if age were purely biological, we'd all agree on what it means to be young or old, mature or immature. Clearly, that's not the case. Age isn't just a number, it's a social idea. Sociologist Cheryl Laz explains that age is socially constructed, much like race or gender. That means we don't just passively get older, we're taught, shown, and even pressured into how to be a certain age. Our culture, institutions, and daily interactions all shape what's expected of us at every stage of life. Take something simple, gray hair. If you're in your 20s and start getting gray strands, it might feel embarrassing, like something's wrong. But if you're in your 60s and don't have gray hair, you might be praised for aging gracefully. The same physical trait means very different things depending on your age and context. Our legal system reinforces age categories too. Think about age limits for driving, drinking, voting, or getting married. These rules aren't about biology, they're social decisions about when someone is ready or mature enough. The media plays a huge role as well. We're constantly shown images of what's appropriate for each age group, what to wear, how to behave, even what bodies should look like. And if you don't fit the mold, society lets you know. Workplace and retirement policies also enforce age norms. For example, until 2006 in Ontario, people over 65 weren't protected from age discrimination, meaning mandatory retirement was legal and expected. This shows how institutions shape our experience of age. Laz's key point is that it's not just biology shaping how we age, it's the cultural meanings attached to each life stage. We're always navigating unwritten rules about what we should be doing at any given age. So what does it really mean to act your age? Should we accept these expectations or challenge them? Think about your own experiences. Have you ever been praised or criticized for acting too young or too old? Who decides what acting your age even means? This is what makes age such a powerful and often invisible influence in our lives. Next, we'll dive into generational divides in Canada and how age works not just as a number, but as a socially constructed category that influences our status, roles, and even opportunities in society. A generation is more than a group of people born around the same time. It's a cohort of individuals who've been shaped by common world events, social trends, pop culture, and technology. These shared experiences form bonds among people within a generation, but also create barriers that can separate generations from one another. Here's the important part. Generations aren't biologically defined. Just like our understanding of race or gender, our understanding of age is shaped by society. Yes, we may refer to someone's chronological age, but it's really the shared lived experiences, more than a specific birth year, that define generational identity. That's why you'll sometimes see different time frames used to define the same generation. This brings us to age stratification, a concept that refers to the hierarchical ranking of age groups. In this system, not all generations are treated equally. Some are valued more and hold more power or influence, while others face marginalization. Think of how youth culture dominates consumer markets, or how older workers are sometimes pushed into retirement. These patterns reflect age-based inequalities, and when we apply stereotypes to whole generations, like assuming seniors can't use technology or that young people are entitled, we're talking about ageism. It's prejudice based on age, and it can impact hiring decisions, media portrayals, and social policies. It affects people at both ends of the age spectrum, though often in different ways. In this section, we're going to explore how Canadian society has experienced generational change through 6 distinct generational cohorts. 1. Traditionalists, born 1945 or earlier. This generation lived through some of the most challenging times in modern history, including the Great Depression and World War II. Known for their loyalty, resilience, and work ethic, traditionalists value stability and savings, often maintaining strong family bonds and long-term dedication to employers. They are Canada's fastest-growing senior cohort, shaped by the golden age of radio, early Hollywood cinema, and the rise of labor unions. 2. Baby boomers, 1946 to 1964. Born in a time of post-war prosperity and raised by traditionalists, baby boomers grew up in a child-focused era filled with optimism. They were shaped by major social movements like civil rights and women's liberation, and events like the Vietnam War and Woodstock. Career-driven and competitive, they shifted their youthful activism into workplace ambition. Boomers witnessed the rise of television, early computers, and consumer culture, often defining themselves through their careers and material success. Number 3, Generation X, 1965 to 1979, often referred to as the lost generation. Gen X grew up in the shadow of the boomers during a period of declining fertility rates and increasing family instability. Many became independent at a young age as latchkey kids. They are known for being pragmatic, self-reliant, and skeptical. Shaped by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, AIDS, and early digital technology, this cohort moved away from job loyalty, preferring adaptability and balance over traditional career paths. Number 4, Generation Y, Millennials, 1980 to 1995. Millennials were raised in a nurturing, protective environment, often forming peer-like relationships with their parents. They came of age during 9/11, Y2K, and the rise of the digital age. Optimistic and collaborative, they entered the workforce with high expectations, but often faced generational friction. Defined by their deep integration with digital technology, social media, and online connectivity, millennials are racially diverse, confident, and tend to value experiences, education, and inclusivity. Number 5, Generation Z, 1996 to 2009. True digital natives, Gen Z doesn't remember life before smartphones or social media. They grew up in a world shaped by global conflict, streaming content, and rapid technological change. Influenced by events like SARS, the legalization of same-sex marriage in Canada, and increased attention to human rights, they are pragmatic, independent, and value innovation, privacy, and diversity. This generation leans toward online learning, self-education, and digital problem-solving. 6. Generation Alpha, 2010 and beyond. Still in early childhood, Generation Alpha is growing up immersed in smart technology from birth. Born the same year as the iPad, they are part of an ongoing experiment in digital learning, entertainment, and interaction. Expected to be the most formally educated and tech-savvy generation, they may also face challenges around social connection and mental health. Their world will be shaped by AI, smart cities, and the Internet of Things, technologies that may redefine how we live and relate to each other. When we study each age group, we must look at how their unique social, political, and technological environments shaped their identities and how that affects intergenerational relationships today. So the big questions to keep in mind: how do generational differences contribute to social divisions? How are some generations privileged or disadvantaged by these constructions? And how can we move beyond age-based stereotypes to better understand each other? Moving forward, let's talk about ageism, a type of discrimination that cuts across all age groups and yet is still often overlooked. We know from sociology that society stratifies people by age, placing them into broad groups like the young, the old, and everyone else. But as J.A. Gerritsen puts it, age stratification and ageism aren't separate, they're intertwined. Ageism is what happens within those stratifications. It's the stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination people face simply because of their age. And unlike racism or sexism, ageism is universal. It's likely something we'll all experience at some point in our lives, whether it's being dismissed as too young to understand or too old to keep up. Here in Canada, ageism plays out in subtle and overt ways. For instance, in 2014, the Conference Board of Canada reported a widening income gap between older and younger workers. People aged 50 to 54 were earning, on average, 64% more than those aged 25 to 29. And this gap was even more stark for women, jumping from 9% to 43% between 1984 and 2010. That kind of economic ageism can fuel resentment and reinforce stereotypes about who deserves opportunity. A case that illustrates this is McKinnon v. Xeltec Plastics Limited, where a 67-year-old worker alleged that he was deliberately overburdened to force him out of the company. The Human Rights Tribunal ruled in his favor, awarding him $27,000 and affirming that age discrimination is a violation of basic rights. But ageism doesn't just affect older adults. Youth experience it too, just in different forms. Youth activist Kathleen Nicole O'Neill outlines multiple types of ageism. Normative ageism creates expectations about how people should behave at a certain age, like the idea that all teens are rebellious or children are naturally immature. Cultural ageism occurs when one generation devalues another, such as older adults dismissing younger people's digital skills or communication styles. Paternalistic ageism assumes youth can't make their own decisions. A powerful counterexample is the charity Free the Children, founded by Craig and Mark Kielburger when they were just 12 and 17. Their work shows that youth can lead social change. Pedophobic, phobophobic ageism is based on fear or dislike of young people, assuming teens are unruly or a burden to society. Economic ageism shows up in wage gaps and hiring biases. Younger workers often earn less for the same work, reinforcing the idea that they're less competent. Scientific ageism uses research to label youth as impulsive or immature, further entrenching negative stereotypes. Institutionalized ageism is built into laws and policies, like voting age restrictions or store rules limiting youth access. This all leads us to adultism, a concept introduced by youth advocate Adam Fletcher. Adultism is the belief that adults are inherently superior and that youth should be subordinate. It's in the way we talk to young people, the decisions made about them without input, and the systems that exclude their voices. Fletcher describes a deeper layer of this called adult-centrism, the idea that adults are the default contributors to society, and youth have to wait their turn to matter. It's reflected in how young volunteers in Canada feel undervalued, even though youth aged 15 to 24 are the most active volunteers of any age group. And here's the risk. When young people internalize these messages, it can lead to what Fletcher calls learned helplessness, a belief that they're not capable or worthy of decision-making. That loss of self-trust is one of the most damaging effects of ageism. So, what can we do about it? We start by recognizing that ageism isn't just about aging, it's about power. It's about whose voices are heard, whose work is valued, and whose experiences are respected, regardless of age. We'll now shift focus to ageism as it affects the aging population, a growing concern, especially in a society where older adults are living longer but not always living better. Here's something that might surprise you. Ageism can be seen as a kind of self-directed discrimination. Why? Because aging is inevitable. We all become the very people we judge. So when society holds negative views of aging, it's not just hurting seniors, it's hurting all of us in the long run. According to the Rivera Report on Ageism, most Canadians acknowledge that ageism is the most tolerated form of social prejudice, even more so than racism or sexism. 1 in 3 Canadians admits to treating someone differently because of their age. While 63% of seniors say they've experienced age discrimination, the majority of this discrimination comes from younger people, followed by healthcare professionals, government, and employers. Common experiences of ageism among seniors include being ignored or treated as invisible, 41%, being treated as though they have nothing to contribute, 38%, being assumed to be incompetent, 27%. But here's the twist. Despite these negative experiences, most older adults actually feel positive about aging. Over 77% of men and nearly 80% of women aged 65 and over report feeling happy and engaged with life. Many associate aging with wisdom, self-assurance, and spending more time with loved ones. Phrases like age is just a number and the best is yet to come reflect this optimistic outlook. So, where does the negativity about aging come from? A big part of the problem is that we live in a youth-obsessed culture. Over 70% of Canadians believe younger generations are more valued than older ones. We're bombarded with anti-aging advertisements, youth-centered media, and even jokes on birthday cards that mock growing older. Sociologist Ann Kingston calls this cultural graywashing, a society-wide erasure or sanitization of aging, reducing older adults to stereotypes or ignoring them entirely. This obsession with youth has serious consequences. It creates a system where healthcare, policies, and social services are designed with the assumption that everyone is young. That's systemic ageism, where our institutions reflect society's fear and rejection of aging. For example, medical complaints from older adults are often dismissed as just part of getting older. And our healthcare system is increasingly unprepared to meet the needs of a rapidly growing senior population. That's why many experts believe we are heading toward a national health crisis. The National Senior Strategy for Canada warns that by 2040, 1 in 4 Canadians will be over the age of 65. The strategy argues that aging should be viewed as a triumph, not a disease. It calls for coordinated action across all levels of government and sectors, guided by 5 key principles. 1. Access. Services must be available and efficient. 2. Equity. Support must be inclusive across cultural, ability, and identity lines. 3. Choice. Seniors should have informed options in their care. 4. Value. Spending must be effective and sustainable. 5. Quality. Services must maintain high standards. This approach would ensure that aging Canadians can live with dignity, independence, and support. And we can't talk about aging without mentioning the rise of dementia. The Alzheimer's Society of Canada is sounding the alarm. By 2040, dementia care could cost Canadians nearly $293 billion annually. Yet Canada doesn't have a national dementia plan, something only 13 countries worldwide have established. The Alzheimer's Society is pushing for a national strategy with goals like increased research and collaboration, better training for healthcare workers, greater public awareness about early intervention, recognition and support for caregivers. This issue is global. At the 2013 G8 Dementia Summit, experts predicted that the number of people with dementia would triple by 2050. And while other countries are preparing, Canada is falling behind. So the message here is clear. If we continue to devalue aging, we're not just marginalizing older adults, we're failing to prepare for our own futures. Combating ageism means reshaping how we think, speak, and plan, not just for seniors, but for all generations. Next, we'll dig into a serious and often hidden issue, elder abuse, a form of mistreatment that affects hundreds of thousands of older Canadians each year. There's no single universal definition, but both the Public Health Agency of Canada and the World Health Organization agree that elder abuse involves any action by someone in a relationship of trust that results in harm or distress to an older person. That could be a family member, caregiver, professional, or even an institution. As of 2013, CARP reported that about 520,000 Canadians aged 65 and older were facing elder abuse, and that number was expected to rise to 800,000 by 2023. Abuse comes in many forms, but the most commonly reported is financial abuse, accounting for 62.5% of cases. This is followed by verbal or psychological abuse, 35%, physical abuse, 12.5%, and neglect, 10%. Here's the thing. These numbers are likely low. Elder abuse is heavily underreported. Victims may feel ashamed, fear retaliation, or worry that reporting abuse could mean losing their only source of care. And since many perpetrators are trusted individuals, it complicates matters even further. Let's break down the types of elder abuse. Physical abuse includes hitting, rough handling, over-medicating, or restraining someone unnecessarily. Sexual abuse can range from non-consensual touching to verbal sexual harassment or violations of privacy. Psychological emotional abuse involves insults, threats, humiliation, isolation, or treating someone like a child, anything that diminishes their dignity or sense of self. Financial abuse is when someone manipulates or steals from an older adult, cashing their checks, forging signatures, or living in their home without contributing to expenses. Neglect occurs when an older person's basic needs, like food, shelter, medical care, and personal safety, aren't met. This can be intentional or result from caregiver inexperience or stress. Violations of autonomy, like withholding mail, restricting visits, denying privacy, or forcing someone into care, are also abusive. Systemic abuse happens within institutions. Think of cases where understaffing leads to neglect or when people are restrained or diapered for convenience, not care. What causes elder abuse? Research consistently points to ageism, negative social attitudes about aging, as a major root. Combine that with a lack of community support, affordable housing, and the economic vulnerability of seniors, and you create the conditions for abuse. Canada has taken some legal steps. Bill C-36, the Protecting Canada's Seniors Act, came into effect in 2013. It allows a victim's age and any related vulnerabilities like health or financial hardship to be considered aggravating factors during sentencing. But legal change alone isn't enough. CARP is pushing for a broader national strategy to truly address this issue. Their recommendations include a national elder abuse hotline, more training for law enforcement, better support for caregivers, new policies and funding to prevent abuse and support victims. Ultimately, stopping elder abuse will require cooperation between governments, institutions, communities, and families. It's not just a criminal justice issue, it's a human rights issue and a reflection of how we value older people in our society. Now that we've explored what ageism is and how it affects people across the lifespan, the next logical question is, how do we combat it? The first thing to recognize is that ageism is not just one group's problem, it's a societal issue. This means that dismantling ageist attitudes and structures requires effort from all corners, individuals, organizations, and governments. As individuals, our role starts with awareness. We need to check our own assumptions. Are we equating age with incompetence? Do we assume young people are irresponsible or that older people have nothing new to offer? Challenging these stereotypes in our conversations and decisions is step one. The Ontario Human Rights Commission suggests that those who interact with the public, like service workers, healthcare providers, and educators, need training that helps break down negative assumptions. This includes understanding the realities of aging and responding to older adults with dignity and openness. At the organizational level, employers need to do more to value contributions regardless of age. That means hiring, training, and promoting based on ability, not assumptions about someone's age. Older and younger workers bring different strengths, and both are essential. Policymakers both in and out of government also have a key role. Policies should be age inclusive, meaning they empower people of all ages to make meaningful choices about their lives. Autonomy and dignity should be built into our social systems. Now, one of the most powerful tools we have is intergenerational programming. These are structured opportunities for people of different ages to connect and collaborate, building empathy and mutual understanding. The OHRC supports this, and we have inspiring real-world examples to back it up. Take the documentary Present Perfect by filmmaker Evan Briggs. The film captures life inside an intergenerational learning center in West Seattle, where a daycare operates inside a senior residence. The residents and children share time together, doing art, singing, dancing, and telling stories. It's a moving portrayal of how intergenerational contact can heal divides and reshape how we see aging. Another key area for change is healthcare. According to medical student Nathan Stahl, current training in Canadian medical schools is often biased against the elderly. Older patients are dismissed, their concerns minimized, and their care seen as less urgent or non-medical. That attitude not only harms patients, it discourages medical students from entering geriatric specialties, leading to a shortage of geriatricians in Canada. Stahl believes that improving how we teach and talk about aging in medical education could make a huge difference, not just in care outcomes, but in recruiting future doctors who want to work with older adults. So what's the takeaway? Ageism is woven into our systems and our culture, but it doesn't have to be. By increasing awareness, training professionals, investing in intergenerational connection, and rewriting the policies and curricula that shape society, we can build a world where people of all ages are respected, valued, and empowered.